Hey guys, welcome back to the Curly Reader. My name's Amanda, and today I want to share with you all of the books that I read in May. Okay, so May was a bit of a different month for me as far as my reading goes. I got on a major audiobook kick. Towards the end of the month, I got on a massive contemporary romance binge, and we just kind of rode the ride, guys. We just rode the ride. So I did at the beginning of the month read 3 historical fictions, and then the rest of the books I read this month were contemporary romance, which is not my norm. Um, all adult books this month. And once again, not my norm. I normally have some middle grade in there. So it was just a bit of a weird month, but I was mood reading and I was loving what I was reading. And so it ended up working out just fine. This month I had 2 5-star reads, 4 4-star reads, 2 3-star reads, and 2 2-star reads. So that was kind of fun as well. So I'm actually going to go through these just in the order that I read them, and let's just get into it. So the first book that I listened to, read, whatever you want to call it, this month is The Last Year of the War by Susan Meisner. This is a historical fiction set during World War II. It is set in a Japanese internment camp here in the U.S. The specific internment camp that this one is set at was for Japanese people of Japanese heritage, but also for people of German and Italian heritage who were thought to be either fascist or Nazi sympathizers. And so it was a little bit different. So the 2 characters in this book, one was German and one was Japanese. And so you have a modern day timeline and a historic timeline. The modern day timeline, one of the girls, they're elderly now and is dealing with Alzheimer's. And so she's just kind of dealing with that and having a lot of issues with memory, but then she is having flashbacks and telling the story of when she met her best friend at this internment camp named Mariko. So Elise is the German girl, Mariko is the Japanese girl, and they have this friendship, and it's kind of explained throughout the book. I will say that this was not my favorite of Susan Meisner's. I was expecting it to be. I was expecting it to be amazing. It has some of my key bookish buzzwords in it. It was good. It just wasn't as good as some of the other ones I've read by her, and so it got 4 stars. But I still really enjoyed it and would recommend it. All right. The next historical fiction book that I read was a buddy read that I did with Katie from Ponytails and Paperbacks, I believe is her channel. And that is The Tea Chest by Heidi Chiavaroli. I don't know if I said that right. This I did not know is Christian fiction. I was not aware of that going into it. It was fine. I don't feel like it really played a huge part in my my liking or disliking the book. Sorry, that was really weird way of saying that. This is a book that I got through my Christmas book exchange that I do with my friends. My friend Lindsay gifted this to me. And this is a historical fiction book that takes place during the Boston Tea Party during the Revolutionary War. And so you're following, I don't even remember what her name is, Emma, who is, her father is a loyalist to the crown, and then some friends of hers are, what is it, patriots? That's the name. Wow. Patriots, and so she's trying to figure out where do her loyalties lie, sort of thing. We also have a present day timeline that is following a girl that is trying to become the first woman Navy SEAL, and you're kind of getting some of her history as well. I did not like this book. I thought it was really, 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 really cheesy. I did not like the writing. The insta-lovey stuff in it was just not believable. Nothing in this was really that believable. I just felt like the characters were not developed at all. It was a no for me. So that one got 2 stars, unfortunately, but it is what it is. All right. And then the last historical fiction book that I listened to this month that I really, really enjoyed is The Diamond Eye by Kate Quinn. This is Kate Quinn's newest release. I've never read Kate Quinn before. This is my first one. It will not be my last. I really enjoyed this book. This book follows a female sniper in the Russian army during World War II. So she's a single mother. She was a librarian, and like a student and a scholar, and she became a sniper during World War II. It's based off of a real person, and it follows her as she becomes the sniper during her battles, that sort of thing. But then there's also this other timeline that takes place where she is visiting the US on like a goodwill mission. I don't know what they call them. But they basically brought, during the war, the US brought a delegation over from Russia to like kind of do a goodwill tour throughout the US to kind of promote support of Russia because Russia was being invaded by the Nazis. And so she was sent over for that. And so there's this timeline regarding that as well. And so initially it's going back and forth and then they like converge on each other. I really liked this book. There were a lot of moving parts, a lot of plot points that were very different and kind of worked together. This was a book that when I got done with it, I had to sit back and I'm like, there were a lot of, how do I feel about the book as a whole and not just like specific pieces of the book? Because there were pieces that I really, really loved. There were pieces that I was like, nah, I don't know. But as a whole, the book for me was like a 4.5. I really, really liked it. I thought it was believable. I thought the characters were very, very well developed. Hearing the author's note and how Kate Quinn went about studying and writing this book, I just thought was remarkable. And so, yeah, I really highly suggest this one if you like to read historical fiction. Even if you don't, give it a try. All right, and then the rest of the books today are contemporary romance books. So the first book on that list is Emily Henry's new release, Book Lovers. I pre-ordered this. I was so excited to get it, and I am happy to say that I love this just as much as her other two books, that adult books, I should say. She has written YA as well. So anyway, I digress. I really, really like this one. This follows Nora and Charlie. Sorry, I had to figure out, I don't remember anybody's names. But this follows Nora and Charlie. Nora, it's told from Nora's perspective. Nora is a literary agent who lives in New York City. She kind of laughs in the face of like the stereotypical Hallmark movie where it's like big city girl goes to the small town, decides that she's not a big city girl, ha ha ha. And she's like, that is not me. I am a city girl through and through. She's kind of uppity, she's kind of uptight, kind of snobbish. And so her sister ends up convincing her to go on this vacation with her to this like small town in North Carolina, like outside of Asheville, North Carolina. And her sister puts together all these different challenges that are kind of stereotypical Hallmark movie things. And so she decides she's going to go. Her and her sister have kind of they've been really close. They've currently a little bit of a strained relationship. She's trying to kind of repair that a little bit. And so they decide to go to this small town. And there she runs into one of her editors that she has worked with, book editors that she has worked with, that she hasn't gotten along particularly well with. It's not necessarily like hate to love, but it's more like dislike, like to love. He's also kind of uppity. She's trying to figure out what's he doing in this small town. Why is he here? They start talking. They end up working together on a book. It's a whole thing. So you're getting their relationship, but then also Nora and her sister's relationship and like what's going on with that as well. And I was here for it. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I loved it. I love Emily Henry's writing. And yeah, 5 stars. 5 stars. So after that, I got, like I said, into a bit of a contemporary romance binge session, and I ended up binge reading all of Abby Jimenez's books. So I had seen that she had a new one coming out that I was interested in. I didn't think I had to read all of the backlist, but there is like a mention of one of the characters in the previous books in her new book. And so I'm like, I'm just going to read all of them. And that was not a mistake. I'll just tell you that right now. Not a mistake. Start at the beginning, read all of them. you don't need to read all of them. The first three are all like in a companion like series. This newest one is not part of that, but it's just fun. Like they're all great. So the first one that I read is The Friend Zone. This is about a woman who needs someone to help her out with some of her work stuff, and so her best friend's fiance's best friend, that makes sense, decides to help her out, and she is friend zoning him hard. She is in a relationship, a long distance relationship with someone who's in the military, and so that door is closed. He knows that, she knows that, and so she's friend zoned him, and he's helping her out with some work stuff, and they just start hanging out. They become really good friends, and then I'm sure you can figure out what happens from there. But so that's the first one. I loved it. Now I will say, and even with book lovers as well, some of these, depending on your steam tolerance, are a little steamy. I tend to be one where I don't mind some, but if it gets overkill or if it gets distasteful, then I'm like, nope, I'm out. I was fine with all of these. So it just depends on your personal like tolerance for that. But all of Abby Jimenez's books do have some steam in them. So just to let you know. But this first one, The Friend Zone, I gave 4 stars. I really, really liked it. Yeah, I really liked it. So anyway, the next one is called The Happy Ever After Playlist. This one follows her best friend. So the main character of the first one's best friend, Sloane, follows her and kind of her looking for love. You have to read the first one to kind of figure out what's really going on, because some things happen in the first one that lead to Sloane kind of looking for love in the second one. But she ends up finding this dog on the side of the road, calls the number, never gets a response, and so calls the number on his tag. Sorry, I should talk in full sentences. Calls the number on his tag, never gets a response back for like 2 weeks. Finally, she gets a response back, and it's this guy who is traveling internationally, didn't have access to his phone. He wants his dog back. They end up texting back and forth, and things ensue, and it is a good time. I loved it. 4 stars. It was great. The next one in the series is Life's Too Short. This one follows a girl whose mom and sister have both died from ALS, and so she thinks that there is a very, very strong likelihood that she could be dying as well, and so she doesn't want to get into a relationship because she doesn't want to mislead someone into thinking that there could be a happily ever after, because she thinks that her time is very limited. And so she ends up talking to her neighbor. He ends up helping her out with some stuff. They're friends. Things happen. There's some misunderstanding a little bit. Some assumptions are made. That sort of thing. This one I liked less than the first two, just because I didn't like the ending. There's a specific point in the ending that I was not a fan of, but I did give it 3 stars. I enjoyed the ride. I just didn't like the end of it. So, I mean, it is what it is. But that's kind of the premise for Life's Too Short. And then this most recent one, Part of Your World, is about a woman who gets in, she drives her car into the ditch in Nowheresville, Minnesota, and this guy helps her out, and she ends up having a one-night stand with him. She is just out of a long-term relationship, and she is not really looking for anything, and she realizes that this guy that she hooked up with is 10 years younger than her. She's 37 and he's 27, and she's just like, no. She is a doctor. She comes from a long line of very prestigious doctors who have all worked in the same hospital their whole lives. She's had a lot of pressure put on her to portray this certain facade for the public, and making sure that she's keeping up appearances for her family and doing the right thing for her dad, and and so hooking up with this guy in Nowheresville, Minnesota, who is like a carpenter and whatever, is not gonna work for her dad. And so they end up the two got the 27-year-old and 37-year-old end up talking and things ensue, yada yada. It goes from there. But it was so good. I loved it. I loved it. 5 stars. I loved it. It was so good. Also, I will mention Abby Jimenez is a local-ish author to me. She has a cupcake shop that has won like Food Network things, and the cupcake shop's about an hour from me. Um, so all of her characters and all of her books, she has at least one character that lives in Minnesota. So specifically in her last book, there's a lot of references to like small towns near where I live, and a lot of things that I completely get because I'm like, that's the next town over from me, or this is, whatever. And so I really love that aspect too, and being able to relate to the locality of it. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed my time reading her books. Would highly recommend, especially if you like Emily Henry's books, definitely read Abby Jimenez because I feel like they're very similar. If you know of any other contemporary romance authors that write similarly to those two, let me know because I'm kind of looking for that. So yeah, anyway, that was my experience with Abby Jimenez. Would highly recommend. The next one that I read was one that I got from NetGalley, and that is The No-Show by Beth O'Leary. This is her most recent release. I think it came out in May as well. And so I read The No-Show. The premise on the summary for this is that 3 women are all stood up by the same guy on Valentine's Day. So one's a breakfast, one's a lunch, one's a dinner. And so these 3 women are all stood up by the same guy. And so you're getting alternating perspectives from the 3 women and their experiences with this guy. And this was not my favorite Beth O'Leary book, unfortunately. I felt the pacing was really off. At about 60% of the way in, I just really didn't care anymore. There are like some twists towards the end. Like I would say 75-80% in, you start kind of figuring out what's happening. And then I feel like the twists that happened, just the whole rest of the book was very misleading and had you feeling a certain way about certain characters. And then the twists, like, kind of flipped it on its head and almost had you feeling sorry for them. And it was just weird. I didn't particularly care for the character development that much. I felt like the twists were just a little bit manipulative. It was not the one for me. And I really like Beth O'Leary. I've read her other 3 books. Sorry if you can hear the door. My son keeps going in and out. But this one just wasn't it for me. I didn't care for it that much. So that one got 3 stars. And then the last book that I read in May was Float Plan by Tisha Dollar. I forgot to write down her name. Anyway, I'll have the book linked below. But this is another contemporary romance. The premise of this one is that the main character, who's Amy, I believe is her name, is going on this boat trip. Her fiance committed suicide. And so they were supposed to go on this big sailing expedition. And so she, in her grief, decides to go on it anyway. And so she decides she's going to sail this boat. And it's like out in the Caribbean, like for real sailing, not just like out on a lake. No, like ocean sailing. And so she decides she's going to go on this journey and figures out pretty early on that she's not equipped to do this by herself. So she hires someone to come on and help her, and then things ensue. I was not a fan of this one at all. I felt the pacing was way off. It was just, the writing was really, really choppy. It just did not work for me in any way, shape, or form. I felt like it was choppy. We didn't get any flashbacks to what her what her relationship was like before stuff happened. And so it just kind of left like this hole in what your expectation was of her behavior and stuff. And like in the first couple of chapters, she's trying to hook up like one night stand. And I'm like, no. So it was not for me. Like I said, the writing was just really, really choppy, and the character development wasn't there. It was just not good, in my opinion. So Anyway, so yeah, those are the 10 books that I read in May. So if you've read any of these, I would love to hear your opinions about them down below. Whether you agree, disagree, whatever. Like I said, if you have any recommendations for contemporary romance authors for me to check out that are similar to Emily Henry and Abby Jimenez, let me know that, because I'm definitely loving listening to all of these books. And that's going to do it for today. So I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that you stick around and subscribe. And until next time, see ya.